Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Beyond the Jump Point, miniseries where I break down everything that's happened in Star Citizen this week. We take an unbiased look at what's to come. This week started off on Tuesday because of Easter Monday, and it started off with This Week in Star Citizen. To be honest, there was really nothing in that we didn't already know, so week really did start out on Wednesday. On Wednesday, we actually got a new PTU build that targeted Wave 3. It's pretty close to being open to all waves at this point, but within this PTU build, there was actually the new handyman missions that were reintroduced into the game. They actually look pretty fun, so I'm actually pretty excited about those. So Thursday brought us the first Star Citizen Live that we've seen in a while. Now this is pretty exciting because it was nice with the potential to get some decent content, as we really haven't had much this year and it's been kind of a dry spell. I'm not gonna lie, they really didn't get into much of anything, and any of the questions that I was actually interested in, they kind of sidestepped. So I don't really see the benefit in going into detail in all of the different things that they talked about. But the highlights that really stood out to me were the discovery, or maybe disclosure is a better word, of why we really haven't seen much this year. Now, we all assumed that it was because of stability, but to be honest, months at a time, we're not really seeing a month worth of work. And it was kind of lightly touched on, and if you read between the lines, they actually called it out. The majority of the teams that would add the new things into Star Citizen that we're really looking for are working on Squadron 42. They're not even working on Star Citizen right now. And they really don't expect that to change for the remainder of the year. I mean, they do have some pretty decently large things planned, it sounds like, but it doesn't sound like we're really going to get anything of any real context, just some more storylines and some minor bug fixes. Now, personally, I actually find this really disheartening because I've pledged a lot of money into this game, and to find out that they're actually taking all of the money that people are pledging into Star Citizen and directing it to Squadron 42, another game that they fully intend on charging for, is kind of disappointing in some ways. I mean, to me, if I'm putting money towards Star Citizen, I actually expect it to go towards Star Citizen. Maybe I'm just old school like that. So the other thing that was discovered during the Star Citizen Live was that there is actually going to be a 6-week gap between release 4.1 and 4.1.1. Now, this makes perfect sense with Invictus coming up in the middle of next month. And I'm really not all that overly surprised. They did say they thought they'd get about 10 releases out this year instead of the 12, so I mean, everything is lining up. One thing that's actually really strange is the PTU, as it stands right now on Friday, is open to all waves. But if they're not actually going to release this release for another 2 to 3 weeks, that actually seems really strange to me that it's open to all waves this early. I'm not really sure what other kind of content we're actually going to see, or if they really actually just want to leave it in there and kind of let the dust settle a little bit. Now, they did mention that in 2 weeks' time, we should expect the 4.1.1 Inside Star Citizen, which will really dive into everything that is actually going to be covered in the release, so I would expect to see that, like I say, in about 2 weeks' time. So the one question that I was really interested in, and I was really hoping that they would bring up and really talk about, is why can't I continue to play for the Frontier Fighters or Freedom Fighters or whatever they were called from the main storyline? Now, to me, I was really disappointed in their explanation. Their explanation basically said they're too bad, as in they're too evil for them to allow us to continue to play. Now, I don't agree with that. I mean, they shouldn't have let us play for them in the beginning if they knew that that's exactly where they were going to go. I mean, sometimes you just want to watch the galaxy burn, and I really was appreciating that out of the Frontier Fighters. But it is kind of been formalized that we are not going to be able to go back and help and support them, as disappointing as that actually is. Now, as far as all of the other factions that we were expecting out of Pyro, all the other things that they had actually promised out of Pyro, well, it sounds like most of that's been put on hold until they can actually bring in some of the new gameplay and stuff that they were wanting to bring in. So in true Star Citizen style, maybe a few years from now, they'll come back and actually kind of more complete Pyro. This makes the Pyro launch that happened earlier this year more and more disappointing. I mean, I think we were all expecting to have these different areas owned by these different factions, and it's just not what we were expecting or promised. And I think that's pretty evident if you look at how the Align and Mine event has really changed things. Pyro is empty. I haven't seen players in Pyro for quite a while. There's the odd player you might see here and there, but during the Supply and Die, for instance, it was definitely a lot more populated. Now all of the criminal activity has really just kind of moved towards the Align and Mine, held in Stanton, and Pyro is just kind of there if you want some more high-value build missions. I don't really feel that segregation that we were really expecting, where Pyro was really the lawless place and Stanton was more the law-abiding citizens, because if you've played Align and Mine, you'll know you have a really good chance of getting shot in cold blood. Now, this brings us into Friday, actually, and on Friday, the only thing that was really pushed out was the RSI weekly newsletter, which does contain the sneak peek you can see on the screen here. Now, I'm not really 100% sure what exactly this is. I know it's from a combat ship. My guess is that it's probably from the Paladin or the Starlancer TAC. But to be honest, I think the game actually has enough combat and fighter ships. I would love to see more of the industry ships kind of rounded out, and maybe some data running and some of those other industries that we really haven't touched on yet. I don't know how many fighters the game really needs, and I really don't know how many they can continue to sell. Now, I know that they're trying to sell some larger fighting ships which have a chance to stand up against Polarises and other large capital-like ships like that. And in that case, I actually do agree with those kind of fighters being brought in. But honestly, it's kind of getting a little bit repetitive to see the best-in-class fighter get nerfed just so that they can reintroduce a new fighter and charge money for it. It's getting a little bit old. Now, in the weekly newsletter, it was also mentioned that the Race 4 of the System 7 race series will be happening on Saturday night as well. I guess it depends what time zone you're in, but for me, it'll be Saturday around noon, actually. And finally, I just wanted to end off on kind of a where is the PTU at kind of update. And right now, the PTU is open to all waves, so everyone who has access to the PTU is welcome to go in there and test. And I believe with all waves being open, that means everyone who is a pledged member of Star Citizen can go in and start testing 4.1.1. Now, personally, it's actually been nice to play in 4.1.1 in the PTU because I'm avoiding the free fly. Now, because it's on the test servers, you don't tend to be as impacted as you would if you're playing on the live environments. Now, that being said, outside of last weekend, I do actually find the live environment to be substantially more stable than it ever has been during a free fly before. But I'm also noticing that there isn't just a bunch of ships laying around like there normally is either, which is a little bit strange. So I'm actually wondering how many people are participating in the free fly. So back on the topic of the PTU and where the PTU is at. Essentially, there are now 5 different mission types that have been introduced into the PTU. 3 of them are permanent mission types. That is the patrol, the ambush, and the handyman types. So the handyman was introduced earlier this week, where it basically has you going around places in Pyro to fix pipes, swap out fuses, kind of more of that industrial gameplay without actually really getting into salvage or mining per se. But it's kind of nice, chill gameplay, so I'm really excited for that to come into live. Now, the patrol and the ambush missions we've talked about previously, but essentially they are what they sound like. You either patrol a certain area doing various tasks, or you have to sit in one place, kind of hide yourself, and ambush a ship as it comes in. Now, there are 2 other temporary mission types that have been brought in, and these are specific for the Invictus launch week. So there's actually a UEE training missions that have been brought in. Now, these are different than the normal training missions. They're kind of geared more towards the beginner, which makes me wonder if there's actually going to be another free fly during Invictus. But these are meant to really help the beginning pilot get familiar with, well, combat fighting in Star Citizen. There's also the hunt for the Polaris missions that have been brought in, and I think that this will be kind of the main storyline that's brought in for the live environment during Invictus. And essentially with this one, no real spoilers because it's happened so many times before, but the Frontier fighters have stolen a Polaris and you have to get together with a bunch of people on the server and try and take it down, and they give you a special reward if you do. Nothing super special about that. I mean, I've participated in my fair share of those, and it's either an Idris, a Polaris, whatever it happens to be, but it should be fun, and the reward is always nice to say that you partook in that. That really brings us to the end of Between the Jump Points for this week. With that said, I look forward to talking to you next week, so make sure that you subscribe to catch the latest news of what happened in the Star Citizen universe. Thank you and have a good night.